crossover, step back, and deposit.
There are over 540,000 high school basketball players in the United States each year. Out of them, 3.5% will play college basketball, and only 1% for D1 schools. And for the last decade, each year, only about 48 college basketball players were selected in the NBA draft. That means if you're a high school baller, the probability of making it to the league is 0.0089%. And of course, for those chances, you have to be at least 6'6". Players shorter than that have much lower chances. But what about a player who stands just 5'9"? Making it to the league? Becoming an all-star? An all-NBA player? That's not just unlikely, it's practically a miracle. But there was one man who didn't give up and defied the odds. Isiah Thomas.
He's got Bradley with him, finds him! Oh! Isiah, what a move.
In 2017, Thomas made the All-Star team, second team NBA, and finished 5th in MVP voting. But just 6 years later and he's out of the league. So how did someone who was never even supposed to make it to the league become one of the best in the game? What was the answer to his success? And if he was one of its bests, why did the NBA give up on him? We spent the last couple of weeks researching, and the answer we found is honestly shocking. This story starts in the late 80s. Picture James Thomas, a diehard NBA fan with a deep-seated love for the Los Angeles Lakers. And in those times, if you were a Lakers fan, you really didn't like two teams, the Boston Celtics and the Detroit Pistons. Funny enough, both of these teams are very important to the story. But first, let's focus on the Pistons, the bad boys. A rough and tough squad known for their hard style of play. Lots of fouls, plenty of techs, more than enough brawls. You know, the total opposite of James's Showtime Lakers. Now, James Thomas had a particular disdain for the Pistons' leader, Isiah Thomas. In the 1988 finals, the two teams met up and battled it out in a 7-game series. A series that featured a career-defining performance from Isiah Thomas in Game 6, where he scored an NBA Finals record, 25 third-quarter points with a sprained ankle. Isiah Thomas killing it in the playoffs? Now, that's some foreshadowing right there. Anyways, despite this performance from Isiah, the Pistons lost in 7 games that year. The next year though, things were looking different. Detroit was energized. They won 63 games that year and steamrolled through the playoffs, meeting the Lakers for a rematch. It was during this finals that James made a bet that would unknowingly set the course for his son's future. What were the stakes? Well, if the Lakers lost, James would have to name his son after the hated Pistons star. As the older Thomas explained in a Sports Illustrated interview, it was either that or repeat my name. And his mom didn't want that. No false tension here. The Lakers obviously lost. And on February 7, 1989, the young IT was born. His father gave him the name with an extra A because his mother insisted on the biblical spelling. Little did James know, he had inadvertently set his son on a path to greatness. He also laid the grounds for a lot of strange media questions in the future, but that's besides the point.
And I'm hearing about this guard in Seattle by the name of Isiah Thomas. And I'm like, this can't be right, you know? Like,
young Isiah's love for basketball ignited early, sparked by the thrill of NBA games his father took him to. His first basketball was also a gift from his dad. He bought it in an old sports goods store for like $80. But still, a lot of money for families back then. Isiah brought it everywhere. When his parents took the ball away when it was time for dinner, he would literally cry. He used the ball to get in on games around Tacoma, his hometown. Quote, "Ever since I was a little boy, I've always been the smallest guy on the court." End quote. He would reminisce in an interview years later. While his stature didn't prevent him from playing with and dominating the older kids, Isiah was worried about his height. He constantly begged his mom to take him to the doctor so he could receive new height projections. In desperation, he would grab hold of metal bars in his garage, trying to stretch his body in hopes of gaining an inch or two, but to no avail. Yet, he was still obsessed. Determined to instill in his son that basketball wasn't the be-all, end-all, James Thomas took Isiah to various courts around town. Courts where the game was tougher, and the players were older and bigger. He was pushed around, fouled hard, and even knocked down. But each time he fell, he rose back up. With every hit, Isiah's resolve only grew stronger. This kid had guts, and his dad was impressed. It was clear, even then, that Isiah Thomas was not just any kid with a basketball dream. He was a force to be reckoned with. By the time he got to high school, Isiah was starting to look like a serious talent. Potential NBA talent. At just 5'8", he was naturally quicker than everyone on the court, so he used his speed to cross up much larger guards. Oh, and young IT was actually dunking in traffic back in high school. He averaged more than 31 points per game in his junior year, making friends with future NBA stars like Mike Conley, Brandon Jennings, and most notably Kevin Love along the way. During this period, he modeled his game after Damon Stoudemire, another small left-handed guard with the knack for knocking down shots and driving by opponents. It was no secret that Isiah's sights were set high. He was looking to go to a D1 school, and one day, the league. Fortunately enough, the call came from the Washington Huskies. On April of 2006, he committed to the program.
Just keep the ball, see if he can do something with the ball. He shoots. Up and scores! Do you like it, Washington?
The Huskies had high hopes for Isiah. He was only 5'9", yes, but so was the Huskies' former star point guard, Nate Robinson. At that time, Nate had just finished his rookie season with the Knicks, scoring 9.3 points, 2.3 rebounds, and 2 assists per game. And Nate was so kind to give Isiah a thumbs up to take his number at Washington. In an exhibition game against Western Washington, Isiah, he dominated, scoring 27 points, sinking 9 out of 12 shots. And that was just the beginning. He followed with another 27-point game and an 81-67 victory over Morgan State. And he would help thrash Florida International 74-51. As a freshman, Thomas kept the momentum, averaging 15.5 points, 2.6 assists, and 3 rebounds per game. He was named the Pac-10 Freshman of the Year. And by sophomore year, he was upping the ante, with averages climbing to 16.9 points, 3.2 assists, and 3.9 rebounds per game. Then came his junior year, a turning point in IT's college career. Over the summer, he teamed up with Jason Terry, a childhood mentor, for grueling 7 a.m. workouts. Terry pushed him, honing his skills and sharpening his game. In a game against the Arizona Wildcats in the Pac-10 tournament, Thomas hit a memorable game-winning shot. But instead of me explaining, I'll let Isiah.
Thomas, shake, crossover, step back, and deposit.
Entering the season as a scorer, Isiah transformed into a point guard powerhouse, averaging 17 points and 5.7 assists per game. He even ranked among the top 10 candidates for the Bob Cousy Award. On March 31st, 2011, he made the leap, declaring for the NBA draft, foregoing his final year of college. The stage was set for the 2011 NBA draft, but Isiah wasn't sitting in the green room waiting for his name to be called. Instead, he was back in Seattle in a gym at the University of Washington, surrounded by teammates and friends. And he wasn't watching the draft. Truth be told, he was too nervous for it. Isiah was aware he wouldn't be selected at the top of the draft. Everyone knew that the number 1 spot was reserved for Kyrie. Remember this guy. He'll become an important part later on in the story.
The Cleveland Cavaliers select Kyrie Irving from Duke University. With the 3rd pick in the 2011 NBA draft, the Washington Wizards select with the 12th pick in the 2011, with the 18th, with the 22nd pick.
The first round was done. Whew, Isiah didn't hear his name. No sweat. There's still 30 picks to go. 20 picks to go. 10 picks to go. 5 picks to go. Thomas described this as one of the longest days of his life, a relentless wait as he saw name after name being called, but not his. The thought of going undrafted loomed over him, a possibility he hadn't considered until the very end. Then, as the draft neared its conclusion, his agent called him.
The Sacramento Kings select Isiah Thomas.
The Sacramento Kings are ready to take IT with the last pick of the draft. Thomas's reaction, relief, gratitude, determination. He had always said all he wanted was a chance, and now he had it.
Isiah Thomas, maybe one of the only NBA players I could conceivably post up in a game, although I suspect I would never catch the ball because you'd front me, I'd imagine, right?
I wouldn't front you, I'll let you catch it.
He arrived in Sacramento, greeted by Tyreke Evans, and they hit the ground running. Training, practicing, preparing. When training camp started, Thomas knew he had to stand out. And he did, by being relentless, by being a killer on the court. He picked up players defensively, full court, and he pushed himself to the limits. And when practice was his only game time, he played like it was the finals. This was more than just making a roster. This was about proving to the world and to himself that he belonged in the NBA. And with each dribble, each shot, each defensive hustle, Isiah Thomas was writing the first chapter of his incredible NBA journey. Isiah Thomas, meanwhile, entered the league with little to no hype. He was the last pick in the draft after all. I mean, how many times have you been excited about a sub-50th pick? Yeah, that's what we thought too. In the beginning, Thomas was playing behind college phenom Jimmer Fredette, who was selected with the 10th pick in the same draft. No one expected much from IT, but they expected a lot from Jimmer. I mean, he was the president's favorite college hooper after all. The contrast between the two couldn't be starker. Jimmer, the slick prep school looking kid that loved to shoot from Steph Curry range, pre-Steph Curry, mind you. And IT, the rough, hard-working, perennial underdog that's ready to do whatever it takes to succeed. So while the spotlight was on Jimmer, Thomas quietly set about proving his worth. And prove it he did. After only a few months, IT actually took Jimmer's spot in the rotation. By mid-2012, Thomas's talent was impossible to ignore. He was named the Western Conference NBA Rookie of the Month in February, averaging 12.2 points and 4.4 assists per game. His debut season culminated with a spot on the NBA All-Rookie second team and a 7th place finish in the Rookie of the Year voting.
Well, that time, no hesitation. Cousins back to Thomas. Yes. 18.3.
The following season, Thomas's star only shone brighter. He upped his game, averaging nearly 14 points, 4 assists, and 2 rebounds. His performance peaked with a then career-high 38 points against the OKC Thunder, a feat he repeated just 5 days later against the Pacers. Thomas's most remarkable achievement came with his first triple-double in an overtime win over the Wizards, making him the shortest player ever to record a triple-double in the league. During the 2013 through 2014 season, Thomas joined the elite ranks of players under 6 feet to average 20 points and 6 assists in a season, a short list that includes the likes of Calvin Murphy and his idol and role model, Damon Stoudemire. On July 12, 2014, a new chapter began as Thomas was acquired by the Phoenix Suns in a sign and trade deal. Before the season kicked off, he underwent wrist surgery but made a triumphant return, scoring 23 points in his Suns debut against the Lakers. But Thomas's time in Phoenix was short-lived. On February 19, 2015, he was on the move again, this time to the Boston Celtics, in exchange for Marcus Thornton and a 2016 first-round pick.
They move it around the perimeter. Isiah Thomas. Little on big as he shoots it over.
In the storied history of the Boston Celtics, legends are not in short supply. Names like Bill Russell, Larry Bird, and Paul Pierce are etched in the annals of basketball greatness. Isiah Thomas, while not matching their longevity or accolades, earned a special place in the hearts of Celtics fans during his brief but meteoric tenure in Boston. Considering how much people loved him, it's weird to think that IT only spent less than 3 years in Boston. For Boston, as part of the Suns' loaded backcourt with Dragic and Bledsoe, Thomas was already a force to be reckoned with. Despite his stature, he was a scoring powerhouse, delivering play after play that was just crazy. Yet, no one could have foreseen the explosion that was about to unfold in Boston. In Boston, Thomas's role was initially that of a bench player. In the 2014 through 2015 season, he didn't start a single game out of the 21 he played for the Celtics. The team began the following season with Marcus Smart and Avery Bradley as starters. However, Lady Fate had other plans for young Mr. Thomas. Just 3 games in, Smart suffered a sprained toe, and Isiah saw his opening. Once he stepped through, there was no looking back.
4 to shoot. A bomb from Thomas. It's gone. It's been his night. A 40 spot.
Thomas seized the opportunity with both hands, exploding onto the scene with a series of high-scoring games. His numbers were stunning: 27, 16, 20, 14, 23, 20, 23 points in just 7 games, leading the Celtics to a 5-2 record in that span. His scoring prowess only intensified as the season progressed. By the trade deadline, hear me out, Thomas had notched 5 30-point games, paving his way to his first All-Star selection. By the season's end, this number doubled. The man pegged as the 6th man had become the Celtics' leading scorer and star player. In the 2015 through 2016 season, ESPN projected the Boston Celtics to win roughly 43 games. However, with Thomas's help, the team managed to get 5 more wins than predicted. While they did get bounced in the first round of the playoffs by the Hawks, the series saw a brilliant IT performance in Game 3. The future looked bright for the Boston squad. Now, this is where it gets interesting. The start of the 2016 through 2017 season marked a landmark in Isiah Thomas's life. Right from the start, he was a scoring machine, racking up 20 or more points in 20 of the first 21 games. In December, he was slowed down by a seeming groin injury. Remember this because there's going to be a lot more on that later on in the video, which left him sidelined for a few games. When he got back, he picked up right where he left off, scoring a then career-high 44 points against the Memphis Grizzlies, including going 7 for 10 from beyond the arc. Thomas's scoring frenzy continued in January. With nearly 33 points, it was one of the highest monthly averages in Celtics history, earning him Eastern Conference Player of the Month. By February, the media was already talking about IT as a potential MVP candidate.
Isiah Thomas, as Floyd Mayweather told us on this show a couple weeks ago, is a legitimate MVP candidate, along with James Harden and Russell Westbrook. Now, in my opinion, every year LeBron's playing, he's the MVP, and you'll figure that out by the end of the season.
Once again, he was named an Eastern Conference All-Star reserve, breaking records and setting new standards. His 40 consecutive games with at least 20 points tied and then surpassed a team record set by the legendary John Havlicek. By the end of the season, Thomas had not only led the Celtics to the top seed in the Eastern Conference, but also finished as the 3rd leading scorer in the NBA. averaging 28.9 points per game. For Isiah Thomas, the 2017 NBA playoffs were a testament to his strength both on and off the court. Just a day before the Celtics' first-round series against the Chicago Bulls, tragedy struck.
Tragic news affecting Boston Celtics star Isiah Thomas. His sister was killed in a one-car accident early Saturday morning, according to Washington State Police.
Thomas learned of his sister China's untimely passing. Yet, in the face of heartbreak, he chose to play. Social media was flooded with a poignant video of Avery Bradley, Thomas's close friend and Celtics teammate, comforting him. The world saw Thomas on the sidelines, tears streaming down his face during a moment of silence for China. It was a raw, human moment that transcended the game. In that game, every move, every assist, every bucket was a mix of basketball brilliance and personal sorrow. Although the Celtics couldn't beat the Windy City team, falling 106-102, Isiah scored a game-high 33 points along with 6 rebounds and 6 assists. In Game 2, Isiah again led the Celtics in scoring. However, he only scored 20 points on 6 of 15 from the field. His team lost, this time by 14 points. Down 0-2 against the Bulls, the Celtics, fueled by Thomas's resilience, fought back, clinching that series 4-2. Unsurprisingly, Isiah's play wasn't consistent. His three-point percentage was only 20% on 7.5 attempts. He turned the ball over 3.7 times a game, and twice he failed to crack the 20-point mark. Still, he averaged 23.6 points, 4.3 rebounds, and 5.7 assists. The victory over the Jimmy Butler and Dwayne Wade-led Bulls set up a showdown with the Washington Wizards in the second round, where Thomas would carve his name into the Celtics' long and storied history. Against the backdrop of personal tragedy, Thomas focused completely on basketball and put every last atom of himself into it. Game 1 saw him rack up 33 points and 9 assists, propelling the Celtics to victory. But it was Game 2, on his sister's birthday, that defined his legacy.
48 points for Thomas. Foul called! Number 6. And they just don't have any.
Thomas delivered a performance for the ages, scoring 53 points, the second highest ever by a Celtic in the postseason. With Boston trailing in the fourth quarter, Thomas unleashed an offensive onslaught, scoring 20 points in the fourth quarter and another 9 in overtime, snatching a miraculous victory. The Celtics triumphed over the Wizards in 7 games, a testament to Thomas's leadership and heart. But the Eastern Conference Finals against the Cavaliers brought new challenges. A nagging hip injury, which had been a silent adversary, sidelined Thomas after Game 2. Don't forget about this either, because it's going to be important later on. The Celtics' journey ended in 5 games, but Thomas's legacy was already cemented. In the face of personal tragedy and physical pain, he had carried his team and inspired an entire city. That summer, while Thomas was still mourning his sister, he received even more bad news. IT was in his contract year, and he was looking for a maximum deal. He said it himself, he was a max guy, so he deserved that contract. In a famous, or better yet, infamous interview with CSN New England, Isiah Thomas said,
I mean, I'm a max guy, so I deserve the max, and we just gotta continue to take care of business on the court and let the cards fall where they may. But I'm happy for all the guards and all the other guys getting their money because they deserve it. But I mean, my time's coming. They know they got to bring the Brinks truck out. They know that.
Yeah, they know they got to bring out the Brinks trucks. Unfortunately for Isiah, that truck never came. And on August 30th, his team traded him. That afternoon, Thomas got a phone call. It was Celtics legend and current GM Danny Ainge on the line. He said hi and got straight to business. Boston traded IT to the Cavs for Kyrie Irving, his fellow draftee and all-star playmaker. While Kyrie Irving's arrival signaled a new chapter for Boston, the decision to trade Thomas felt like a betrayal to many. Even Thomas himself felt betrayed. His time in Boston, filled with love and heroics, ended not with a parade, but with a heartache that resonated throughout the city. A report from TheAthletic.com revealed just how tough Thomas was, playing through not just a hip injury, but also a loss of cartilage and arthritis. Opting for rehabilitation over surgery, Thomas faced an uphill battle, one that kept him off the court for the Cavaliers until January 2018. Thomas's debut with the Cavaliers was a moment of triumph over adversity, scoring 17 points in just 19 minutes. His return to TD Garden, although not as a player, was met with a standing ovation, a testament to the bond he had forged with the Celtics fans. However, his time with LeBron and co was short-lived. He averaged almost half the points than the year before. His shooting percentage was abysmal, and his defensive struggles were evident. His journey soon led him to the Lakers, who were more interested in his expiring contract than his play.
Having to miss 6 or 8 months with that is so tough to come back from. And I think when you lose some of that explosiveness at his size and being a guy that is used to having the ball in his hands so much, it's tough to come in and try to make a huge impact right away.
The next chapters of Thomas's career with the Nuggets and later the Wizards were a mix of struggle and resilience. He found a semblance of his former self in Washington, starting 37 games and impressing with his three-point shooting. Yet his physical limitations, particularly in driving past opponents, were clear. IT's Clipper stint also ended abruptly, as he was released, marking his first time being waived. This was a harsh reality check, but it also presented an opportunity. With the pandemic halting the NBA season, Thomas saw a chance to finally address his hip injury and aim for a healthy return. But still, after a few 10-day contracts, Isiah Thomas was out of the league in 2023. So after going through his history, what did we find out? Why did the NBA give up on Isiah Thomas? While there are many, and I mean many reasons why Isaiah's career didn't play out the way it did, we can narrow this list down to 6 specific reasons. Number 1. The hip injury. The first factor, and most obvious one, that affected Isaiah's career was the hip injury. While Thomas experienced his fair share of small injuries, one nagging injury derailed his career significantly: the hip injury. First, we need to know exactly what happened. So let's dissect Isiah Thomas's hip injury, a critical point in his NBA career. Since I'm not a doctor, I consulted what else? YouTube, to find out more about the details of IT's injury. More precisely, I watched Dr. Brian Sutter's breakdown of Isaiah's problem.
The official diagnosis he had was something called femoroacetabular impingement syndrome, along with the resultant labrum tear.
A chronic issue that's more about gradual damage than a single incident. The condition arises from the femur and acetabulum pinching in the hip joint, leading to consistent wear and tear. Professional athletes, especially in basketball, often face this kind of injury. In fact, a study of professional basketball players undergoing hip arthroscopy for FAI shows that they successfully return to their previous performance levels post-surgery, maintaining their efficiency on the court. It's a common problem in professional sports, with athletes managing to bounce back with proper treatment. So where did it all go wrong? Initially, it didn't appear to be a career-altering injury. As we said, hip issues are not uncommon among NBA players post-retirement. However, the problem was that Thomas's injury was seemingly misdiagnosed. After his injury in March 2017, nothing was mentioned about hip problems. The following day, the Celtics even announced on Twitter that Isiah Thomas won't be traveling to New York and Philadelphia. The tweet mentioned that he's out with a right knee bone bruise. But as we know now, things were much, much worse. After getting the surgery he needed, Thomas couldn't play a single game, train, or have a pickup game for months. Heck, he even had trouble putting his socks on in the morning at a certain point. Number 2, mishandling of Isaiah's recovery.
So that was probably the only thing that I wish they would have done different, and I would have really sat down and really asked those questions, like, what worst case scenario, what could happen?
The second major factor contributing to Isiah Thomas's departure from the NBA spotlight revolves around the handling of his recovery. Thomas himself expressed frustration over this on the All the Smoke podcast, revealing a disconnect between his understanding of the injury and its actual severity. Okay, so this next part is a little confusing, and when I say a little, I actually mean a lot. So I'll try to break it down chronologically so it's easier to follow along. So as we now know, the hip injury initially happened in December 2016 during a game with Orlando. However, the doctors diagnosed it as a groin injury. Isiah missed 2 games and the doctors prescribed him with PRP shots to stimulate healing of the groin area. What the doctors didn't realize is that these groin strains were actually caused by the damage to Isaiah's hip. So realistically, at this point in December, his hip is already messed up. It's just disguising itself as a groin injury. Fast forward to March 15, 2017, when Boston faced Minnesota. Early in the third quarter, Thomas collided with Karl Anthony Towns in midair. After a few seconds on the floor, IT got up and without a hint of a limp, finished the game with 27 points and 4 assists, leading the Celtics to victory. That collision made the injury even worse. He needed immediate medical attention, but the doctors misdiagnosed the injury again. In fact, the day after the team announced on Twitter, Isiah Thomas will not travel this weekend to New York and Philly. He's out with a right knee bone bruise. Yeah, not a hip injury, a knee bone bruise. And with that being said, Isiah was back playing after a couple of weeks. If the doctors actually realized what was wrong at the time, he would be as far away from the NBA court as possible. If a patient is dealing with cartilage damage, which Isiah was, the doctors need to treat the injury as soon as possible. Cartilage deterioration happens quickly. Even regular people need immediate medical attention. For months, he was playing NBA level basketball for 30 to 40 minutes a night without the right medical treatment. So we can only really speculate how much IT's injury worsened during this period. But should the blame fall completely on the Boston Celtics staff? Let's turn to YouTube's Dr. Brian Sutter for more help again. When discussing Isiah's injury, it is crucial to understand the medical complexity. Initially, doctors opted for non-surgical methods. Could the doctors diagnose the injury earlier? Yes, sure. But diagnosing FAI isn't an easy job. Let me explain. Diagnosing this isn't as straightforward as seeing something on an x-ray. It's tricky because sometimes x-rays show these bone issues, but the player doesn't feel any pain or have any other symptoms. At other times, the x-ray doesn't show much, but the player is in much pain. Yeah, medicine is complicated. So it's not just about what you see on the x-ray, it's also about how the player feels. In the opinion of Dr. Bryan, Boston's medical staff didn't actually make any huge mistakes here. They diagnosed an injury, and when they discovered how severe it was down the line, they recommended surgery, the best way to handle it. Hold up, because this is not the first time the Boston Celtics medical staff was accused of mishandling an injury. Kemba Walker, a 4-time All-Star and Celtics player who is now out of the league, has been cited as a victim of bad injury management. As Enes Kanter Freedom, a former Celtic, recently recounted on his Twitter, after having a killer season with the Hornets, Kemba decided to sign with Boston. I'm sure he didn't know this was going to cost him his career. In 2020, hit, and the NBA decided to create a bubble and put us all in a hotel. They were controlling pretty much everything. Only players know what has really happened in there, which I'm going to get into that in a different episode. I see Kemba in the hallway at the hotel, and this man can barely walk. Medical staff warned the coaching staff, Danny Ainge, former president of basketball operations, and Mike Zarin, vice president of basketball operations, and said, do not play this man. They decided to play him. We ended up losing in the conference finals, but for Kemba, that was it. The following season, Kemba could barely play, and after the 2021 season, he got traded to the OKC Thunder. At Kemba Walker probably will never play basketball in the NBA again, but the Celtics organization could not care less. End quote. Nonetheless, IT's hip was supposed to heal, and he should have recovered 100% after the surgery. Former players like Tracy McGrady thought Isiah should be prepared for a smaller role after he recovered from surgery. In a jump segment, McGrady explained, quote, Isiah's not a young spring chicken anymore. He's got a lot of miles on his body. We don't know how severe his injury is. One thing I know is that you just gotta go to rehab. There's a possibility that you could be in and out of the lineup. I mean, I remember I had surgery on my knee. I thought it would be something small, but it completely changed me as a player. Even before the surgery, I was trying to rehab, but it didn't fix it. It was a temporary fix. I was in and out of the lineup, so I hope it's not too severe because I love watching him play. But not many expected a fall so big in so little time. Prior to the injury, Thomas was a force to be reckoned with. The third leading scorer in the NBA. Post-injury, the stark contrast in his performance was undeniable. After averaging nearly 30 points in the season before, his average dropped to less than 15 in the season after. So why did that happen? Number 3, Isiah Thomas's playstyle depends on his hips a lot. Hip injuries are not uncommon, and they are treatable. A study from the Stedman Philippon Research Institute in Vail, Colorado, followed 18 professional basketball players, 14 men and 4 women, who underwent hip arthroscopy for symptomatic FAI between 2001 and 2016. While it took more than 7 months on average for players to recover, their performance didn't suffer as a result of it. The study found no significant change in the player efficiency rating, PER, when comparing pre- and post-surgery performance. This was also the case when comparing these players with match controls who did not undergo surgery. In the NBA, we've seen similar things happen. Guys like Kevon Looney, Michael Carter-Williams, and LaMarcus Aldridge all experienced major injuries to their hips, and they all made comebacks. Aldridge even made a full recovery to become a 6-time All-Star. What made Isiah Thomas any different? First, you need to remember that Isiah is mainly a scorer. Hip strength and mobility are vital for basketball players, especially when it comes to scoring. The hip joint is associated with over 15 muscles, including flexors, extensors, and rotators. What do these muscles do? When it comes to shooting, particularly layups and dunks, the ability to jump high is crucial. Hip flexors play a key role in this movement. They are responsible for pulling the thigh toward the abdomen, contributing significantly to jump height. Similarly, the hip extensors, including muscles like the gluteus maximus, provide the necessary force and power for a jump. Decreased mobility in the hip joint can make even simple movements feel difficult, let alone highlight finishes Isiah was known for. Isiah's playstyle depends a lot on hip mobility, quick first step, sudden changes in direction, and even long-range shooting. All these actions require a lot of hip strength and mobility. During an operation to fix his hip, the doctors trimmed the ball of his femur, capped it with a metal covering, and removed damaged bone and cartilage from the hip socket, which itself got a metal shell. While that handled the pain and mobility to a point, it still caused IT to lose his speed and explosiveness, which allowed him to finish around the rim with multiple defenders on him. There's also another factor that many people tend to forget. Number 4, politics as usual. At the time, Thomas was nearing the end of a $27 million 4-year deal. Sure, that's a lot of money for guys like you and me, but for an MVP candidate at that time, it was minuscule. At the time, the average salary in the NBA was roughly $5.2 million. The average point guard was making $6.2 million, slightly below Isiah's $6.6 million. All the guys who finished in the top 5 for MVP that year were making a lot more money than him. I mean, just check out these stats showing on the screen. Boston was basically getting an MVP caliber player at the price of a role player. You can say whatever you want about Danny Ainge, but at the end of the day, he's a businessman. Okay, let's just compare Isiah with Westbrook, who won the MVP that year. In the 2016 through 2017 season, Russ made more money than Isiah did in the last 4 years. At the end of that year, he also signed a 5-year, $200 million designated veteran player extension, which more of us know as the Supermax contract. IT wanted something similar, but the Celtics weren't prepared to give him anything close. As reported during that time, Ainge was open to offering a 3-year, $100 million contract. Again, that's not a small amount by any means, but Thomas was looking at the $200 million Steph, Harden, and Russ were making and wanted something similar. Ainge knew he could not reward Isiah with a max deal with an injured star that also risked killing the Celtics salary cap for the next few years. Thomas's chance of receiving a big payday had significantly decreased due to a combination of bad timing, injury, and unfortunate circumstances. Since 2018, IT was only able to earn a little over $5 million, playing for 7 different teams during that period, often seeing little to no playing time on the court. In spite of his previous injuries, IT can still play. He has shown us this plenty of times. Just in 2021, playing in the Pro-Am League in Atlanta, Isiah scored 65 points in his debut, setting the league record. And this is not your random YMCA league. The league featured NBA players like Paul Millsap, Montrezl Harrell, Lou Williams, alongside D1 college players and overseas professionals. Following his impressive performance in Atlanta, Thomas participated in Jamal Crawford's Pro-Am in Seattle, where he set a new scoring record, dropping 81 points. He can hoop for sure, but in the NBA, stars past their prime are often seen as potential trouble. Former stars often want significant roles.
You know, I'm not a system player, I am a system.
Role players typically come at a lower cost and have little to no demands, making them more attractive for teams with tight budgets, not looking for drama on their roster. I mean, shoot, the perfect example, Dennis Rodman couldn't find a team in his last year, despite grabbing 14.2 rebounds per game at the age of 38. While Isiah may not be that kind of player or person, in reality, that's how a lot of GMs see former All-Stars. Number 5, NBA shifted from vets to specialists. Another key factor in Isiah Thomas's absence from the NBA is the league's strategic shift. In recent years, there's been a noticeable transformation in team composition, moving away from the seasoned veterans and more towards players with specific skill sets, known as utility players or specialists. These specialists may not possess star power, but they excel in niche areas like rim protection, perimeter defense, or being a reliable 3-and-D player. Basically, players like Duncan Robinson, Kevon Looney, and Pat Connaughton illustrate this trend. Contrast this with Thomas's profile. In his prime, he was a dynamic cutter, a solid playmaker, and a proficient shooter. However, he was never categorized as a specialist in the NBA's current context. His forte, finishing at the rim, was significantly impaired by his injuries, leaving him without a standout specialty in a league increasingly valuing such roles. Despite his limitations, Isiah Thomas has experience on his side, right? His presence, experience, and knowledge of the league can help. Well, studies like the statistical validity of veteran presence in the NBA have tried and partially failed to measure the influence of veterans on NBA squads. However, it's an undeniable fact that veterans can help young players adapt to the league and become more capable of helping their team. After all, there's a reason why Udonis Haslem has had a job for the last 3 years, in spite of scoring less than 70 points total. The average NBA player is a little over 26 years old. While stars like Chris Paul and LeBron have been able to remain relevant way into their careers, the league as a whole is now younger than ever. The NBA is also experiencing a rise in off-court issues among its players. Many people like Kevin Garnett and Gilbert Arenas believe that the absence of veterans in locker rooms is a major factor.
You put Sean Kemp up there and say, hey, young fellas, I know what y'all want to do when y'all get your money. Yeah, y'all want to go out there and get this. Listen, here's my child support list. This is how much I spend on child support. We start like, oh, yeah. I don't know if I want to spend all my money on this.
Right.
Like, you need to put real stories, real players that we know up there that's going to really tell us. Like, that's why I said this. Y'all are lying. Every time you put somebody up in there in the suit, you're lying too.
Young players are also entering the league with more fame, money, and playing time before proving themselves. This has led to a sense of entitlement among young players, which can negatively impact their performance and team dynamics. Jaw and his well-documented gun-related issues, Miles Bridges' arrest on felony domestic violence charges, the Rockets are being called a mess by players on the team because of internal arguments. These incidents highlight a broader pattern in the NBA, where the league's youngest teams like the Grizzlies, Rockets, and Hornets are navigating off-court challenges. Even Zion mentioned it on Gilbert Arenas' podcast.
I'm just putting people around me with wisdom, put me on game to certain things, and just go from there though. Like, tried to nurture me, tell me, man, like, you don't need to do that, you know, you need to do this. I mean, they didn't try to force their way into your life. So at this point in my life, I'm just looking back at it like, man, who really gave me wisdom? Who really tried to put me on game to things? And like I said, man, at the end of the day, people gonna get their opinions. What I can say is I do respect brutal honesty. I'd rather somebody be brutally honest with me than try to sugarcoat it, because at the end of the day, if they honest with me, I know what I need to do to fix it.
You see, players like Thomas can help foster a more disciplined and professional environment. Last but not least, number 6. Small players typically don't age gracefully. You can't mention IT without talking about his height. Sure, he's not short compared to the average guy in the street, but compared to guys in the NBA, the G League, and even the Euro League, he's tiny. He used this to fuel his passion, but in the long run, it posed challenges, especially when it came to sustaining a long career at the top level. As noted by sports analyst Bill Simmons, the NBA history book shows a stark reality. Only 2 players standing 6'1" or shorter, Lenny Wilkens and John Stockton, managed to maintain a performance of 11 points and 5 assists per game past the age of 35. This statistic underscores just how exceptional it is for shorter players to sustain long and successful careers at the highest level. The original Isiah Thomas, before his Achilles injury, was an exceptional talent. He averaged 19.5 points and 8.4 assists per game in the 1987 through 1988 season. Post-injury, his performance dipped to 14.8 points and 6.9 assists per game in the 1993 through 1994 season, signaling a decline that led to the end of his playing days. This showcases the challenges smaller players face, especially when their game relies on physicality and athleticism. On the flip side, John Stockton, known for his playmaking rather than high-impact moves, had a much longer career. Even at 40, in this final season in 2002 through 2003, he averaged 10.8 points and 7.7 assists per game. His style was less about physical finishes and more about strategic assists, contributing to his long career longevity. Today, players like Derrick Rose mirror the original Isiah Thomas' style, high-scoring and athletically driven. However, this approach has its risks, as seen in Rose's injury history, reflecting the challenges for smaller players in maintaining their physical health over a long career. The comparison between players like Thomas, Stockton, and Rose highlights the diverse strategies smaller players have used in the NBA. While players like Thomas and Rose showcased high-scoring athletic play, they also faced significant injuries. In contrast, Stockton's strategic approach allowed him to play longer, showing the importance of play style for smaller players in the NBA. The most successful NBA players often fall within the height range of 6'4" to 6'10". This height bracket offers an optimal mix of agility, durability, and quickness, coupled with a significant height advantage. As we stand at the outset of the 2023 through 2024 NBA season, the question lingers. Will Isiah Thomas ever grace the NBA courts again? The former All-NBA player, still without a team, remains hopeful. His stance is simple yet poignant. No demands for playing time, shots, or a starting position. His request? Just an opportunity to prove he's still one of the best players in the world. Thomas's journey, as he expressed in a recent Sports Illustrated article, has been a testament to resilience. From being the last pick, reaching the pinnacle of MVP contention and all-star status, to finding himself back at square one. His story is a roller coaster of triumphs and setbacks. I've seen the bottom, and I've seen the top, says Thomas, encapsulating his undying spirit. I just need my foot in the door. All I need is a chance.